Brilliance Audio presents Maniac, the Bath School Disaster and the Birth of the Modern Mass Killer by Harold Schechter, performed by Braden Wright. As a historian of American crime, I spend an unhealthy amount of time poring over old newspapers, in archives, on microfilm, and increasingly online. While researching a book on Belle Gunness, the infamous Lady Bluebeard, who slaughtered an indeterminate number of victims at her Indiana murder farm in the early 20th century, I had occasion to consult the July 7, 1902 issue of the Fort Wayne Daily News. Along with stories on a strike by 1,200 railroad freight workers, a visit to the United States by the Crown Prince of Siam, a local man who survived a shark attack while swimming off a pier in Atlantic City, and an elderly negress who inherited 400 acres of prime Kentucky farmland from her former mistress, the front page featured articles on one Peter Dempsey, who attempted to slay all 7 members of a Montana family in a scheme to abduct their 17-year-old servant, a quarter-breed Indian girl with whom he had become enamored. Another 17-year-old girl, Maud Bernice Fritz of Kokomo, Indiana, who, after allegedly being gang-raped by 3 high school acquaintances, went into the woods, soaked herself with kerosene, and set herself on fire. An adulterous pair from Knoxville, Tennessee, Howard Jenkins and Mrs. Agnes Fleming, who conspired to murder Mrs. Fleming's husband and Jenkins's wife in order that they might marry themselves. And a massive manhunt for the escaped desperado Harry Tracy, a kill-crazed Western badman said to make Jesse James seem like a Sunday school teacher by comparison. What's always striking to me about such dreary news items, and examples could be multiplied indefinitely, is not the sheer volume of appalling crimes that occurred on an everyday basis in a past many romanticize as a more halcyon age, but rather how instantly even the most horrific were forgotten. Harry Tracy, it is true, remains a figure of some renown to aficionados of Old West outlawry. Compared to such legends as the James Boys, Butch Cassidy, and Billy the Kid, however, he has utterly faded from public memory. The same phenomenon holds true today. In the early 2000s, until the exercise became too depressing even for me, I kept a file of clippings about appalling crimes that ran in the New York City tabloids for a day or so before vanishing forever from the media. Here's a small sampling. Girl kills sis over burger. New York Daily News, February 12, 2005. Woman's chopped up body found in Bronx. New York Daily News, March 15, 2005. Taught hang dad gets 22 years. New York Post, March 22, 2005. Monster guilty of ma and son murders. New York Post, May 28, 2005. Teen mom throws baby to hungry dog. New York Daily News, March 6, 2001. It's no surprise that the dailies are filled with stories like these, at least since the 1830s, when the New York Herald's lip-smacking coverage of the Helen Jewett Hatchet murder set the template for tabloid sensationalism. Newspaper publishers have recognized and cashed in on the popular appeal of grisly crime. However cynically expressed, the journalistic adage, "If it bleeds, it leads," conveys a discomforting but undeniable truth. Murder sells. Of course, some murders sell better than others. The Herald's publisher, James Gordon Bennett, observed, "Men who have killed their wives and committed other such everyday matters have been condemned, executed, and are forgotten. But it takes a deed that has some of the sublime of horror about it to attract attention, rally eloquence, and set people crazy." The kind of all-too-common homicides that Bennett alluded to, husbands murdering wives, and vice versa, parents killing children, and vice versa, simmering disputes between neighbors that escalate into lethal acts of violence, might provide the public with a bit of morbid titillation. They are a tasty little snack for that primordial part of ourselves that philosopher William James called the carnivore within. But for a murder to really take hold of the communal imagination and exercise an enduring grip, something else is necessary. Bennett called that something the sublime of horror. And it's true that certain infamous American crimes feature atrocities straight out of a Gothic horror story. Cannibalism, necrophilia, sexual mutilation, and the like. But horrific violence isn't enough to ensure that a crime will become an ongoing media sensation, let alone a permanent part of our cultural mythology. Few recent crimes, for example, have been more nightmarish than the one that befell the family of Dr. William A. Pettit, Jr. On the night of July 23, 2007, Stephen J. Hayes and his accomplice, Joshua Komisarjevsky, a pair of small-time hoodlums who had bonded at a halfway house for parolees, invaded the Pettit home in the bucolic community of Cheshire, Connecticut. After savagely beating and then binding the 50-year-old endocrinologist, they proceeded to terrorize and torture his family, raping his wife, Jennifer Hawk Pettit, and at least one of the couple's 2 daughters. In the morning, they forced Hawk Pettit to go to the local bank and withdraw $15,000, after which they brought her back home, strangled her, doused the children, Haley, 17, and Michaela, 11, with gasoline, and set the house on fire. Only Dr. Pettit managed to survive. And yet, for all the attention the case received, including major coverage on network TV news, few people, apart from the most hardcore true crime buffs, and of course, those most affected by the tragedy, could tell you the names of the perpetrators. Within a startlingly short time, the appalling case had been all but forgotten.